Hey, I'm Olivia,
And hey, I'm Dad.
and you're listening to Soarin' Around WDW. Welcome back to the wildest flight in the wilderness, or something like that. We are here again this week to continue our Big Thunder Mountain Railroad Treasured Attractions series, and today we are going to wrap up this part of the series on one of our absolute favorite attractions by looking into the mechanics, Imagineering, fun facts, and of course, our personal stories. So, Dad, why does Big Thunder feel so different from riding something like a Six Flags mine train coaster? They're both steel roller coasters with trains and mountains, but somehow one feels like an adventure and the other feels just like a ride. Why do you think that is?
I know there's a lot of theme parks that are out there, amusement parks, I guess, that have uh, taken the mine train idea. Even Dollywood has one that I wrote on a few years ago, and it was good. But it's let's just face it, Disney's at a different level. Universal is also at another level with their some of their attractions. But I think that's why
Yeah.
Disney just takes it to it. The storytelling behind it and everything. The people that work there, not saying the people that work at other amusement parks are bad people or anything. It's just a different vibe. But they're trained a little bit differently. They have a little more pride working at the park. The people that the cast members that are there, it's all those things. I take all that into consideration. The Imagineers that developed that. I know we're going to talk a little bit about that. Developed that Disney attractions and that attraction especially. So yeah, I just think it's just a different. Uh, let's face it, it's just they just have more money to do bigger and better things, and they do.
Yeah, money is definitely a part of it, and the Imagineers and their talent, and like you said, just the people that they train, the way they train them, the way that they ingrain the storytelling into the training of all the cast members. Anyone I know that's worked at Disney as an Imagineer, as a college student, anyone has always said that they were trained with so much precision, storytelling, customer service in mind, and I think all of that really weighs into the themes of these coasters. And like this one isn't just a typical mining coaster, that's for sure.
One of Tony Baxter's biggest goals wasn't designing a coaster, it was designing a believable mountain. Most amusement parks work like this. Engineer builds coaster, then designers add rocks. Disney flipped that process. Instead, Imagineers imagined where miners dug, where rivers flowed, where explosions happened, where the railroad naturally fit. Only then did they place the track. That's why the coaster disappears into the tunnels. That's why the curves feel purposeful. You're following an old mining railroad, not a roller coaster layout. Unlike many coasters where turns exist purely for thrills, Big Thunder's turns happen because a train is avoiding rock formations, going through canyons, crossing rivers, entering mines, climbing switchbacks, escaping collapsing tunnels. Everything has an in universe explanation. You never think, why are we turning left? You think, we're following the railroad.
One of my favorite Imagineering tricks is that most roller coasters proudly show off the track, but Big Thunder hides it. Looking at the attraction, you mostly notice the rocks, the trees, the bridges, the waterfalls, and the tunnels. The track really blends into the scenery. It makes the ride feel less mechanical and feeds more into that story aspect. Another thing that Imagineers utilize in this attraction is something called layering. There's never just one thing happening. As an example, you're climbing up that second lift, you're hearing things like the steam, the whistles, the wind, the music. You're seeing the animals, the explosives, the water, the miners' equipment, the rock work, the vegetation. Then suddenly, boom, the dynamite explodes. All while you're climbing, there's constant visual storytelling.
Tony Baxter loves movement, not just your train. Everything else moves too. Water splashes, steam blows, animals move, smoke rises, explosions happen. Other trains race overhead. Even if you stand outside Big Thunder and never ride it, it feels alive. Compare that to many amusement parks where only the coaster trains move. Forced perspective is another Imagineering trick at play here. The mountain isn't nearly as large as people think. Imagineers use smaller trees, smaller rock formations, different colors, compressed scale, all to make it appear much taller. From Frontierland, it looks enormous, but in reality, it's much shorter than many thrill coasters. Also, the rocks aren't one color, they're dozens. Imagineers studied real southwestern deserts so that the guests will find reds, oranges, purples, grays, browns, and yellows. Depending on the time of day, the mountain changes appearance. In the morning, you'll see it as a more bright orange. In the evening, you'll see deep red. And at sunset, it's almost glowing.
Then we have the sightlines in the parks. From many areas, you can't see the backstage buildings. You mostly see mountain, river, trees, and frontier buildings. That helps convince your brain that you're actually in the Old West. I think that's why I'm struggling so much, especially talking about the Magic Kingdom attraction, with being able to see a ton of construction going on for Piston Peak. Part of me wants to see it, and part of me feels like it just kills the atmosphere so much. But there really was no other way for them to have it all covered up. They would have had to have huge construction walls, and that wouldn't really bring the ambiance either. So that obviously also would have been a huge expense. So I think there wasn't really a way around it. But Dad, do you kind of feel like the construction ruins the vibe of this ride at all?
Yeah, I think any construction around any major attraction at Disney, and there's a lot of construction going on right now,
Yeah,
right? I mean, it's all over all the parks. Um, yeah, I do. It does ruin the vibe. The only cool part about it is, I guess you might get a sneak peek at what's going
exactly.
on. I don't know. I think it flies over the wall there a little bit, right? So you're kind of over where the river used to be. So you get a little look see of what's going on there. But short of that, yeah, I'll be happy when Piston Peak is complete, and I'm excited about that ride. But I'm sure we'll talk about that down the
Yeah,
road.
I think it will blend really nicely eventually. And I do like, yeah, part of me really wants to see what's happening over that wall, but then it does kind of, yeah, kill the vibe a little bit.
There's also the sound element. Big Thunder sounds incredible. Steam whistles, mine carts, wind, birds, explosions, animal noises. Even before you board, you hear trains racing and people screaming in excitement. Disney wants your ears to tell the story before your eyes do. And this coaster does a great job of doing that. Big Thunder only reaches around 35 to 40 miles per hour, depending on the park. That's not particularly fast. There are neighborhood roads with higher speed limits, yet guests come off saying, "That was awesome." Why? Because they weren't just measuring speed and intensity, they were immersed in a story. Tony Baxter has often talked about how Disney attractions aren't about breaking records, they're about creating emotional experiences. Big Thunder isn't trying to be the tallest or fastest coaster in the world. It's trying to convince you that you've boarded a runaway mine train racing through an abandoned mining town, and for millions of guests, it succeeds.
Now, to get into the nerdy part of how it all works. Before we talk about the trains racing through the mountain, we need to talk about something that riders never really see, which is something called block zones. A block zone is essentially a section of track that can only hold one train at a time. Think of it like a highway divided into sections. You don't want cars entering a section of road if another car is already there, and roller coasters work the same way. Big Thunder Mountain is not just one continuous track. The ride is broken into multiple sections, and the ride's computer system constantly knows where every train is located. The station is one block. The lift hills are blocks. Certain brake sections throughout the rides act as block boundaries. So the unloading and loading area are controlled separately. And if a train is stopped in one block, the system will prevent another train from even entering that section.
The magic trick is that Disney is making it look chaotic. The trains feel like they're flying through the mountain, barely missing each other, but behind the scenes, the ride is carefully controlled at every movement. A lot of guests probably assume that because trains seem closer together, there must be some kind of last second emergency system stopping them. But the reality is much simpler. The system is designed so they never get into that situation. A train cannot leave one section of track unless the next section is clear. For example, train A leaves the station. Train A enters the mountain. The system knows train A is there. Train B cannot advance into that same section until train A has moved forward.
The ride doesn't wait until a collision is possible and then react. It prevents the possibility from even happening. It's not like a car with brakes that slam on when you're about to crash. It's more like Disney built invisible traffic lights throughout the mountain. One of these things that guests don't think about is how much coordination happens every single time that a train leaves the station. Every dispatch requires multiple things to happen. Number one, guests enter and exit the train. Number two, cast members check the restraints. Number three, the computer verifies that the train is ready to go. Number four, the station sends permission for the train to actually leave. And then number five, the track ahead is confirmed clear. Cast members aren't just pushing a button and sending trains out, which I think is what a lot of people think happens, but they're really balancing safety, timing, guest loading, and ride capacity. And Big Thunder has 3 trains that can run during normal operation, and the entire goal is to keep trains moving efficiently. This is why you might see a train sitting on a brake run or waiting before entering the station. It isn't broken, it's part of the system managing the spacing.
Now, Big Thunder Mountain doesn't have a traditional launch or a giant drop. The ride gets almost all of its energy from the lift hills. The chain lift is literally pulling the train uphill and storing energy. When the train climbs, the motor is doing work to raise the train. That energy is stored because the train is now higher above the ground, and gravity converts that stored energy into a speed as the train races downhill. Big Thunder has a multiple lift hills, and a huge part of that is because the mountain is designed as a story. The ride isn't one huge climb followed by one huge drop. Instead, the train keeps escaping deeper into the mountain, climbing again, and getting thrown into another runaway adventure. The lifts are basically the reset buttons that give the train enough energy to continue.
Everyone knows the classic roller coaster sound click, 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 click. That sound comes from the anti rollback system. The purpose is simple. If the chain lift stops moving, the train cannot roll backward down the hill. Traditional coasters use a system called a dog and ratchet system. I had to kind of read about all of these different terms, but the train has a mechanism that interacts with the track on the lift hill. As the train climbs, it moves over those teeth, making that iconic clicking sound that you hear. If the chain stops, then the mechanism catches and the train stays exactly where it is. Because Big Thunder has multiple lifts, each one has its own safety system. Every time the train climbs another hill, the ride's not just giving you another wow moment, it's also making sure that the train is safely controlled.
Yes, they're making sure it doesn't go backwards, right?
Yeah.
Like on Everest.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, that's planned, as we
An
know.
intentional backwards.
The, the, and yes, intentional. The entire story of Big Thunder is that you're riding a runaway mine train, but the irony is that the train is actually incredibly controlled. Throughout the ride, there are multiple braking zones. These aren't like car brakes where someone suddenly slams on the brakes. Instead, they are carefully positioned sections of track that control speed and spacing. Disney uses different types of braking systems, including friction brakes and magnetic brakes. Friction brakes use physical contact to slow the train. Magnetic brakes use magnets to create resistance without touching the train. The brakes are used for slowing trains before entering another block zone, maintaining spacing between trains, and stopping the train at the end of the ride. The coolest part? Most of the time, riders don't even realize the brakes are working. They are hidden in the storytelling. You're not thinking, wow, that magnetic brake slowed me down perfectly. You're thinking, whoa, did we just almost crash into that cave wall?
The genius of Big Thunder Mountain is that Disney took a ride based on chaos and turned it into a perfectly controlled machine. Every turn, every drop, every moment where it feels like the train is barely staying on the track is actually the result of decades of engineering, safety systems, and careful design. The mountain may be wild, but behind the scenes, every single moment is planned. Now, I have to say, if you're looking for a great cast member perspective of this attraction, go check out the podcast called The Magic We Made. And that's from our friends from Force Perspective, Alex and Brianna. Their last episode that they did in March of this year, they've taken a little bit of a break because they are expecting. So I'm excited for them. But they did an episode on Big Thunder Mountain. It was called Big Thunder Mountain Guild Roundtable with people who worked on this attraction for years back when it first opened. And it was a really cool listen. They had some awesome stories. They had some great different little, behind the scenes secrets and hidden things that I won't give away here because it's fun to listen. But yeah, it was really cool to hear from people that were actually operating the ride. Some of them near or on opening day, some of them even, just a few years years ago still. So it was really cool to hear about that. Is this a ride that you've ever been stuck on, Dad, or like stopped for more than like a few seconds at a time?
I had to think about that, but I believe we were stopped on it and we were evacuated off it.
Oh,
I think Doreen and I were on it. This must have been probably 15 years ago, and for some reason they never, reveal what the problem is.
yeah.
Right? I mean, there could be a variety of things. Someone could have got sick or passed out or whatever. It could be a lot of things, or it could just be a mechanical problem, or a computer problem. But yeah, I remember being stopped at stopped somewhere along the way. I don't think we're up on a high hill or a higher hill or anything, but I do remember stopping, and we were sitting there for quite a while. Then the cast member came and said, "Well, everyone's got to get off," and we worked our way down and got off. So
Oh, man.
being a kind of a Disney freak, it was kind of fun. It's like, oh, I like to have that happen on all the rides, right? To be able to get, like Space Mountain or something, that'd be really cool.
Yeah, I
So
feel like that's definitely the sign of being a Disney nerd is getting excited about being evacuated off a ride because I'm the same way. I'm like, "Oh, that's so cool." Like some of the rides I'd love to be
yes,
evacuated off of like Old Splash Mountain or Tiana's. I think that'd be cool. Pirates would be so cool. Obviously Haunted Mansion. So,
sure,
yeah,
Haunted Mansion,
I was
yeah,
just
sure,
rewatching Regan and I's Every Ride Run from last or 2 years ago now, December 2024, and we got stuck on the big lift hill that you can kind of have a great view, but we didn't get evacuated or anything. But we stopped maybe for 30 seconds, but I remember both of us looking at each other and we were like, "We've never been stuck on this before." So it was, yeah, it's definitely
wow,
crazy. The only other time I've been stopped is like right before the end by, before you pull into the caverns, probably just waiting for people to unload or someone who had disability getting on or off. That takes a little longer sometimes. But yeah, it's not one that I've been
right,
stopped on often. It's usually pretty smooth the way they have the double system. Each side goes and there's one out on the track and things like that. So they do really cool with the timing, really good job with the timing for sure. So now let's look into some statistics and comparisons. I know we kind of talked about the international parks last week, but I wanted to share some comparisons that I found interesting. So there are 4 different versions of this ride for anyone that might have missed last week's episode. Definitely go back and listen. But there is Disneyland California, which opened first, Magic Kingdom, which opened second, Tokyo Disneyland, which opened third, and Disneyland Paris, which opened most recently in 1992. The ride length, I thought this was super interesting. Disneyland's is actually the least. It is about 2475 feet. But then Tokyo Disneyland comes after that at 2600 ish feet. And then Magic Kingdom is almost 2800 feet. So they're all fairly close together. But I kind of thought Magic Kingdoms was a little longer, and it is just by a little bit. But then Disneyland Paris's Big Thunder, they had to really go big here. This track is 4,900 square feet, so almost double what Disneyland's is. Did you know that, Dad, that it was
wow,
that much
wow.
longer?
I had no clue. No, I had no clue when you just wrote that, right?
Yeah, we just rode that and it is the best one. I mean, like no spoiler here. It's the best. I said that last week too, but it is really cool. But what I thought was even more interesting than the ride length in feet is the duration because the Disneyland California one lasts about 3 minutes and 25 seconds. The Paris one, even though it's almost double the length, is 4 minutes. So that means that thing is flying. Like it must go faster by a good bit. And again, this is all approximate. It's nothing official. Like this is all taken from online sources. But I thought that was super interesting that even though it's almost double, it's only about, 35 seconds longer. So you really fly, you're cooking on the Disneyland Paris one. And when it says top speed online, it says Disneyland California is 28 miles per hour. Magic Kingdom and Tokyo are the same at 36. And then Disneyland Paris is 40. So you definitely are going faster. I was surprised to see that Disneyland was that quote unquote slow because it does not feel like that. I still really love that version of the attraction too. But what I thought was interesting is I thought Disneyland Paris's height was taller. Like the mountain height seemed a lot taller. I think it's just the perspective from it being out on the island, but it's actually quite a bit shorter. So all three Disneyland, Disney World, and Tokyo Disneyland are 104 feet. And Paris, it says it's only 72, which really surprised me. So I was like, huh, I wonder why that is. Similarly, what surprised me is the highest drop is 100 feet across the board for Disneyland, Disney World, and Tokyo. But then Disneyland Paris is only 72. So I was like, oh, that is so funny. I like in my head, Disneyland Paris is so much more enormous and has the higher drops, but it really doesn't. So I thought that that was super interesting. The similarity with the lift hills, they all have three lift hills. Like we talked about, they kind of had this lift, drop instead of one giant drop like a lot of bigger coasters. And the boarding station at each place, the only outdoor boarding station is Disneyland, which actually makes sense because their weather is much more accommodating to an outdoor boarding station. All the other three are indoor. The location, they're all in like Frontierland or Tokyo's version of Frontierland, which is called Western Land, which I think is kind of funny. The story town for Disneyland is called Rainbow Ridge. The story town for Tokyo Disneyland is also like Rainbow Ridge inspired, it says. And then Disney World is a town called Tumbleweed, whereas Disneyland Paris is this Thunder Mesa, which really ties in with their Phantom Manor, which we had talked about a little bit. And in each one, they kind of talk about this natural disaster that's hit the town. For Disneyland Paris and Disneyland California, which is appropriate, it's an earthquake, which I was like, oh, well, that tracks. For Florida, it's a flash flood, which also makes sense for Florida weather. And then for Tokyo, it's a tsunami. So I'm like, oh, well, they really like did that culturally appropriate. I mean, that just like tracks for sure. Even though the Paris mountain is shorter above the ground, much of the attraction, like I talked about, kind of travels below the water level of the what they have instead of Rivers of America. It's called Rivers of the Far West, making it feel much larger than it actually appears, which is super interesting, that forced perspective. So did any of that kind of surprise you, Dad, or did you know about like the natural disaster piece at all?
I didn't. I have not done any research really on the Paris or Tokyo version. A lot of the information that I got was pretty much recently from you that just wrote it. So,
Yeah.
and of course, reading all this, of course, all this research that you did. But no, they're and a lot of them are, as far as size and things, are pretty similar. But you're right. What surprises me is how long, how much track there is for Disneyland Paris. That just kind of blows my mind, but it's not that much longer a ride. So what's going on there? And it's not all that much faster if it's 40 miles per hour top speed versus 36 or even 28. Um, you know, I don't know where they're gaining that. It's just going. It's maybe it is going faster than that. I don't know. I'd have to do the math, and it's too late for me to try to
Yeah,
figure that out.
yeah. Too late in the night to do math, but and again, this could not be 100% accurate information, but that's what I found online, so I was like, "Okay." The capacity for the rides is all very similar. They all put out about 2,000 riders per hour, which again, thinking about just like Disney's capacity is crazy. It's really wild. The construction cost for Disneyland was about 17 million. Magic Kingdom was very similar. Tokyo Disneyland got into the 20 millions, and Disneyland Paris was an estimated 30 plus million, which again makes sense. They had to dig out that space, make the tunnels, all that stuff. So that definitely makes sense that it costs more. So I just thought those were some cool, really fun facts about this attraction.
Yeah, great information for sure. And Disney can sometimes seat three people in a row, or one of them is a small child. That means a completely full train can technically hold up to 45 guests, 15 rows times three, although this is uncommon and depends on party composition. Most trains leave with around 27 to 30 guests. I know when I wrote it, I don't think and when Mikado was little, I guess we had her between Doreen and I. She might have been a little squirrel, I don't
Yeah.
know, 4 or 5 years old if she was told to ride. But other than that, normally you just see two people, in a seat. For an attraction that's been around for more than 45 years, it's no surprise that Big Thunder Mountain has made its way far beyond the Disney parks. Whether it's films, television, comics, video games, or even Disney merchandise, the wildest ride in the wilderness has become one of the most recognizable attractions Disney has ever created.
One of my favorite connections has to be, I'm sure yours too, Dad, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. I didn't know if you knew this, but during the iconic minecart chase near the end of the 1984 film, the sound designers actually used recordings of mine trains from Disneyland's version of Big Thunder Mountain Railroad to create the sound effects for that sequence. That's such a fun piece of Disney trivia, especially when you consider just over a decade later, Disneyland would open the attraction Indiana Jones Adventure Temple of the Forbidden Eye. And then in 2012, Disney would actually acquire Lucasfilm, officially bringing Indiana Jones into the Disney family. Did you know that about that attraction?
I've never heard that. That's super cool because I love all the Indiana Jones movies. Love them all.
Yeah, I
So
figured
that's
you
pretty
would like
cool.
that. Looking back now, it's almost kind of funny to think that Big Thunder and Indiana Jones were connected years before Disney even owned the franchise. And speaking of Indiana Jones, it's easy to see why the attraction was such a natural fit because both Big Thunder and Indiana Jones Adventure share that same sense of exploration, danger, and obviously adventure. They throw you into abandoned mines, mysterious caverns, and crumbling landscapes where it feels like anything could happen. And even though they're completely different attractions, completely different types of attractions, ride vehicles, all of that, they really do complement each other incredibly well.
Big Thunder has also inspired several original storytelling projects over the years. Back in 2013, ABC ordered a pilot for a television series based on the attraction. The show was intended to be a supernatural adventure centered around the mysterious powers hidden within Big Thunder Mountain and the legends surrounding the mining town. Unfortunately, the project never moved forward beyond the pilot stage, so we never got to see what a Big Thunder television series might have looked like. It's one of those fascinating what could have been Disney projects that many fans have forgotten about.
The attraction has even made appearances throughout pop culture. If you're a Modern Family fan, you might remember the Disneyland episode where Phil Dunphy confidently proclaims himself as the king of roller coasters before taking Luke onto Big Thunder Mountain. Of course, after already surviving Indiana Jones' adventure, Phil's confidence starts to disappear pretty quickly. It's a short moment, but it's always kind of fun seeing Disney attractions make appearances in popular TV shows. Big Thunder has also shown up in several Disney video games over the years, whether you're building your own Disney park in games like Disney's Magic Kingdoms, which Eiley is playing on her iPad right now, or exploring the parks in titles such as Connect Disneyland Adventures. Big Thunder Mountain is almost always included. That really speaks to its status as one of the signature attractions, and when developers want to recreate the feeling of a Disney park, Big Thunder is usually one of the first rides they include alongside icons like Haunted Mansion, Pirates of the Caribbean, and Space Mountain.
It's funny you mentioned Eiley on the iPad playing that right now. It's like uh, I can attest that my daughter is raising a couple of Disney nerds, Disney freaks, whatever you want to call them, just like herself, right? It's just being passed down through the
Yeah,
generations,
she found this
which is
game
great.
and we were just traveling to see my grandparents in Northern Michigan. My dad's actually up there right now as we record, but and we let them use the iPad when we travel and she's like, "I want to download this Disney app," and it was free. And yeah, I was like, "This is super cool." It's kind of like a Disney roller coaster tycoon almost, like very basic version where she gets to build her own park and like da 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 and she is so into it and it just yeah, Maddie's like well, there goes that. It's, useless for me to even try to get the kids away from it because they just love it so much. Not that he's trying to, but,
That's
it's they just naturally
right.
have taken upon a love like I do, which I got from you. So there we go.
Yeah, passing it down. That's awesome. For fans who love Disney lore, there was also a Marvel Comics miniseries released in 2015 as part of the Disney Kingdoms line. Working alongside Walt Disney Imagineering, Marvel expanded the attraction's backstory by introducing Abigail Bullion, the daughter of a mining company founder Barnabas T. Bullion. The series explores life in Rainbow Ridge, the mysterious supernatural forces inside the mountain, and dives much deeper into the mythology behind the Big Thunder Mining Company than guests ever see while they're riding the attraction. While the comics aren't considered official attraction canon, they're really a fun read if you've ever wanted more of a story behind the ride. Big Thunder has even become one of the Disney's most recognizable visual icons. Its towering red rock buttes have appeared on everything from park maps and attraction posters to merchandise clothing, collectible pins, ornaments, and artwork. Even people who have never ridden the attraction can often recognize its distinctive silhouette, especially at Disneyland, where the mountain sits right in the heart of Frontierland. It's one of those landmarks that instantly says Disney Park.
And Big Thunder's story may not be finished yet. In 2022, Disney announced that a feature film inspired by the attraction was in development, joining a growing list of movies based on Disney theme park rides. While there hasn't really been much news since that initial announcement, the success of films like Pirates of the Caribbean has shown that attractions can become surprisingly compelling movies when given the right story. Big Thunder really already has rich mythology, memorable characters, and a setting full of mystery, so it certainly has plenty of material to work with. It'll be interesting to kind of see if Big Thunder Mountain becomes Disney's next attraction to successfully make the leap from the parks to the big screen. So, if Disney actually made a Big Thunder series today, would you rather see it kind of as a Western family film, this supernatural thing they talked about, Indiana Jones style adventure, because Pirates succeeded because of Jack Sparrow. Jungle Cruise worked because it mixed comedy and adventure. Haunted Mansion now has had multiple films, and supposedly Tower of Terror is going to get another adaptation. We'll talk about that in a second. But what direction would you kind of want this to go?
Well, I'm kind of old school and I grew up with a lot of, Western movies and things. So I would probably pull more for the Western style of, series. But, or I could also go with Indiana Jones too. I guess either way would probably work for me.
Yeah, it was funny when I first read about the TV series that they were going to do and then they pulled the plug, quite a few years ago. We said that was back in, let me look here, 2013. Um, the description of like the supernatural ghost town reminded me this might like trigger some people's memory if you ever read the Boxcar Children. I remember specifically one book. I'd have to look at what number it is. I still have them. Eiley also reads these. And there's a ghost town, like Western town book. And I was like, oh, I could totally see like a ghost town type scene to fit with Big Thunder. That's about as supernatural as I'd want it to get. I mean, I don't think it should be anywhere close to something like Haunted Mansion, but I do think that that could fit in like the Western supernatural kind of vibe. But it would definitely have to be some kind of adventure, like, in the caverns, through the mines kind of situation too. So back to the Tower of Terror project, rewind a little bit to 2021. I know we're talking about Big Thunder, but wanted to kind of talk about this because this is my favorite attraction. We did talk about this back in our Treasured Attractions, our very first Treasured Attraction that we did. And they announced that they were developing this brand new theatrical film inspired by Tower of Terror. And I can't remember how much we talked about that in this series or if we did at all, but the project initially had Scarlett Johansson producing and at one point expected to star in. Josh Cooley, who is in Toy Story 4, writing the screenplay, and then later reports said I'm going to say this wrong, so I'm sorry. Taika Waititi became attached to direct. When Disney reportedly brought them onto the Tower of Terror project, many fans kind of thought that that was an intriguing choice because he excels at taking unusual concepts like Thor Ragnarok and how different that was than the other Marvel movies and giving them memorable characters and emotional depth. So his films often mix this mystery, adventure, and comedy, which would fit the eerie but fun tone of the Tower of Terror attraction. Then everything kind of got complicated. Scarlett Johansson sued Disney over the simultaneous theatrical and Disney Plus release of the movie Black Widow. Many fans assumed that then the Tower of Terror movie had been totally canceled, but because of that lawsuit. But instead, after the lawsuit was settled, Disney publicly stated they plan to continue working with Johansson on future projects, including Tower of Terror. And then just last year in 2025, Scarlett Johansson explained the biggest challenge of this Tower of Terror project isn't scheduling or budgets, it's that the ride itself doesn't contain enough story. And she said it was kind of a hard nut to crack. Unlike Pirates, which has pirates, ships, treasures, cursed skeletons, and a huge world to build from, Tower of Terror is basically this haunted hotel, 5 people disappear, lightning, and the Twilight Zone. So that's an incredible atmosphere, but only a few minutes of actual narrative to work with. And so she kind of was saying expanding that into a 2 hour movie while still feeling true to the attraction has been surprisingly difficult. And it's funny because Disney has kind of had the exact opposite challenge with Big Thunder. Tower of Terror has this incredible atmosphere, but very little backstory. especially without repeating the 90s movie, lest we all forget. Y'all better not forget there's a movie that exists that they already made about Tower of Terror. That's a great classic if you haven't watched it. But Big Thunder, on the other hand, has decades of established lore. This Barnabas T. Bullion character, Rainbow Ridge, the Cursed Mountain, the mining company, the earthquakes, and supernatural forces. So Imagineering has quietly been expanding that mythology for 45 years. I don't know that all of that existed when the attraction first came out, but they've kind of built upon that throughout time. So, what are your thoughts on another Tower of Terror movie? Would you rather see a Tower of Terror new series, movie, or a Big Thunder new series or movie? Kind of what would be your preference there, Dad?
Well, I love Tower of Terror. It's probably my top. It's probably my third top attraction of all of Disney. As I think I've said before. I know it's your number one.
Yeah.
Um, I think the movie they came out with way back when that you love. I just kind of leave that alone, and I think Scarlett Johansson's right. There's just not a whole lot there to grab onto to make something. You have to just come up with a bunch of stuff, and I think that would kind of, I don't know, dull the Tower of Terror itself. It's like, oh, let's not do that. So I'd rather see a Big Thunder setup again, like a Western series or something tied in with like an Indiana Jones type thing. I think there's just a lot more there to play with. So I would definitely have to go with that.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it'd be cool to have it be a series instead of a movie, but I know that wouldn't get as much attention and wouldn't draw as much money, so I feel like they would do a movie like they did with Jungle Cruise and like they did with Haunted and everything, so it will be interesting to see. D23 is coming up real soon. I'm trying to remember when this episode is gonna come out here, but I think, yeah, this one will come out before we do our D23 wrap up. And so it'll be interesting to see if this comes up at all. I don't think it will, but they'll be talking about different movies that they have in development. So I'm curious if either the Tower of Terror movie or this Big Thunder Mountain movie will come up. What was your first memory of Big Thunder and riding this attraction? Dad, do you remember or have anything that sticks out from riding it the first time or even like times that you've ridden it that are memorable?
The first time I rode it must have been in 1996. The first time we went back to Disney, you were very young.
Mhm.
Regan was not born yet, but your mom was pregnant with Regan. So, I mean, that was that long ago that I rode it for the first time. And even though it was been there for a long time, it was just the first time I've been back to Disney in years. Um, so my first memory was riding it and really enjoying it. This is a great ride. I've always loved that ride. It's still one of my top uh, coasters in all of Disney, hands down. Um, Another time I remember riding it, the fireworks were going off. That was probably most memorable. When
Yeah.
Doreen and I were riding it at night, we knew the fireworks were going to be going off soon. Obviously, you're just getting a glimpse of it, right? You're tearing around on that, but it was still kind of cool to have the fireworks going off in the distance there while you're flying around on Big Thunder. So that was probably those two were the most memorable for me.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't remember the first time I rode this attraction like so many others. I think out of fear, I have such a memory of like Tower of Terror and Splash, like the first time I ever rode. But for whatever reason, I don't remember. I know I have always loved this attraction, same as you. And I think my favorite memory of riding this has actually been with Eiley. Her first time was during a Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween party. I think I've told this on the podcast before, but we were at Mickey's Not So Scary. She wanted to ride. She rode with me first and Maddie, and then shortly thereafter, Regan and Steph. And then we went back on it with her again. And one of my favorite things about the Halloween party is you get on attractions, and oftentimes if it's empty, they'll say, "Go around. Do you want to go around again? You don't even have to get off." And she was like, "Yeah." So we went around again. And then they asked a third time, and I was like, I gotta get off, Eiley. I'm sorry. But she thought that was the coolest thing ever. It was just such a good memory to be able to, see that and have her get to ride it multiple times. And then back just, recently in Disneyland California last year, she got to ride it a total of 6 times in one day. She just loves that ride between rider swap and then Blake finally being tall enough. And she absolutely loves it. She talks about Big Thunder Mountain with an F every day. And she just thinks it's the coolest thing ever. When are we going to go back on the train ride? The train ride. So, It's just really, really special. It's always been a really fun ride. And I think you've told the story too about how Regan rode it for the first time during a Halloween party. Is that right? Like with his friend?
Right, yeah, he's always afraid of coasters. He was probably 10 or 11 years old, and, for some reason, he went on it with Doreen and I with his friend. He loved it so much that they just kept going around and going on it and going. I think it was probably 4 times he went on it because
Yeah.
he just kinda broke through the fear of coasters, right? And this wasn't a monster coaster, but it's a great starter coaster, it really
Oh,
is.
yeah.
So, yeah, I had a great memory of Regan, riding that with his friend at the Halloween party.
Yeah, when I was just on Happily Ever After with our friends Mitchell and Amanda, they were talking about how it almost feels like Big Thunder is a better starter coaster than Barnstormer because Barnstormer is just like so rough and whips you around and is uncomfortable. And this one actually, like, it's fun with the story. Most kids love trains, and it's just kind of like a better starter coaster, especially now that they've decreased the height requirement to 38 inches. It makes it easier to get kids on there earlier. So I would agree. I mean, it's definitely not a baby coaster, so to speak, but it is not as rough as like Space Mountain or something else, or even Barnstormer, to be honest. So,
I agree.
do you prefer to ride it then at nighttime, or do you prefer to ride it in the daytime? Do you have a preference?
I would prefer the daytime because there's just so much to see. There's so many little
Yeah.
skits going on, a little vignettes, right? The miner in the bathtub and all the different stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
If you're, if you ride it enough times, you know where all the thrill parts are and the fast turns, and you kind of get used to just start looking around. And we've ridden it so many times, you start looking around at all the different things that the Imagineers put in it, which really make it unique. So I prefer, nighttime's fun, but you miss a lot of that stuff, even though it's lit and everything to some degree. You just catch it better during the day. So
Yeah, I love it during the day, and there's just so many fun little things that you can see, and seeing the goat that's up there is always a fun one. Getting to see the little possums that are hanging from the tree as you fly by, and some of these things you're flying by so fast you can't even like basically tell what you're looking at. But there's like the pigs, the chickens, all these different things, the coyotes. And then, yeah, it's just such a fun one. I do love riding it at night. I think that ride and Tiana's, in addition to Astro Orbiter and maybe the TTA People Mover, those are probably the 4 best rides to ride at night because you just get such a good view when there's fireworks at least. It's just so fun to ride those attractions in the evening, but in the daytime is great too. It's just there's so much to look at, like you said. Do you kind of remember the first time that you realized it was probably the first time you went to Disneyland, but that Disney rides were just different than other rides with this story element or like the way they make you feel and different? Like, when was the first time you kind of recognized that? Was it your very first trip?
yes, it had to be because I'm coming from a small town called Alpena, Michigan, population about 15,000 people, and my only experience with a theme park was the county fair.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
the roller coaster there was, that if there's a kiddie coaster, they slap these things together, all these rides together, right, real fast, and it's pretty junky.
Scary.
The people working there, sometimes kind of scary too.
Yeah.
But that was my impression. Even though I love going to the county fair in August in Alpena, it's probably happening right now. Now that I think about it, it's great, But you get to Disneyland or Disney World, you're in another dimension, right? I mean,
Oh,
there's just
yeah.
no comparison. So that's what I compare it to. And seeing the Haunted Mansion was the thing that just blew me away back in 1970 as a 10-year-old young man. That's when I knew there's something better out there. Of course, watching Wonderful World of Disney on Sunday nights too. I knew we had to get out there at some point to see Disneyland. So yeah, I that's where I realized your Disney rides were a lot different than our county fair.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's something that comes up that we could probably do a whole podcast episode on, but just like people asking, like, what is it about Disney? Like, why is it so, special? Why do you keep going back? You ride the same rides. I don't get it. But I do remember, probably the first time I remember realizing there was a difference was going to even just like Busch Gardens in middle school. And I had gone when, we went that one time when I was really, really young. I mean, I don't really remember that first time at all, other than we left pretty quickly because it was not exactly what we thought and it was hot and Regan was tired. But we went back in middle school. I went with a friend and thinking like, I mean, it's fun, but it's just not the same. It's just there's not that story element. It's the rides can be really cool and really fun and thrilling and whatever, but there is that story piece and cast member magic piece and you can really tell the difference. So I think I was probably in middle school the first time I realized, like, oh, this is not quite the same. And Disney is just so much more magical. But okay, so now talking about, we love to rank things on this podcast. So where does Big Thunder rank among the other Disney mountains? So we're going to include Big Thunder, Space Mountain, Expedition Everest, the Matterhorn Mountain, and Splash, because that technically, I mean, slash Tiana's, but you haven't been on Tiana's. So let's just say Splash Mountain. Where would Big Thunder kind of sit? How would you rank these attractions?
For me, and it might be a surprise, but maybe not. Maybe not. Big Thunder's my number one.
Okay.
Expedition Everest number two. I wish it was still Splash Mountain. Sorry, not sorry. I really wish they just would have left that alone. It was so cool. And Tiana's, I'm sure, is. I haven't been on it just because we haven't been over to the Magic Kingdom since it changed over. So I'd say Splash, and then Space Mountain, then Matterhorn. I rode the Matterhorn when I was 10 years old, also, and even then it beat me up. I remember
Oh,
coming off that going, not feeling well, and I think I felt my back was hurting, and I was 10 years old. Like, what is this? It was cool. It was super cool, but it was so rough.
yeah.
And I think it had a lot to do with the technology at the time when that first came out, because that was the first coaster that had round or rolled track, right? Round track versus a flat track. That was the
Mhm.
first coaster to have that. So, um, yeah, so that's how I would rank mine. Big Thunder at the top, Matterhorn at the bottom.
Okay, yeah, it's funny. My ranking is the exact same. So we didn't even talk about this ahead of time, you guys. That was just all
No, no.
natural. Big Thunder, Expedition Everest, Splash, Space, and then Matterhorn. Yeah, Maddie was so funny when we went to Disneyland. He's like, "Let's go on Matterhorn. Let's go on Matterhorn." And then we get off. He's like, "Oh man, now I remember why I do not want to go on this ride because it's fast and it definitely, yeah, it's a chiropractor for sure." So it's funny. Okay, well, I think that's kind of why Big Thunder Mountain has lasted for more than 45 years as it is, pretty much, because it's not the fastest coaster or the biggest coaster or the coolest coaster, but it's because Disney convinced millions of people that for those 3 minutes, they weren't sitting in a coaster train. They were explorers chasing gold through an abandoned mining town. And today, before we wrap up, we are going to hear from one of our friends, Steven, over at the Idiot's Guide to Imagineering, and listen to his hot take for us to talk about and discuss. So let me go ahead and throw that in here.
Hey, flight crew, it's Steven from Idiot's Guide to Imagineering, and my hottest Walt Disney World take is that the buses are the best transportation on property. They literally go everywhere, they hold a ton of people, there's almost always another one coming, and they usually drop you off right near the park entrance. And at a lot of resorts, the bus stop is even closer to your room than any other transportation option. Maybe I'm a little biased because on my very first Disney trip, as a kid, I told my parents that the bus to Magic Kingdom was the best ride I'd ever been on. But I've never understood why people avoid places like Animal Kingdom Lodge or, resorts that are bus only. I get it. Monorail is iconic, Skyliner fun and new, the boats are relaxing, but when I actually need to get somewhere, give me the bus every single time. So my closing argument here, two words, air conditioning. That's all I got. Peace.
Okay, so that was our friend Steven from Idiot's Guide. So I thought that was a really funny hot take, and really interesting. So what are your thoughts on the Disney buses, Dad? Are you pro Disney bus? Are you con Disney bus? I know you don't get to take them super often, but when you have, what have been your experiences on them? Good, bad, and different?
There are times, depending on where you're going, you have to wait for a little while. It just depends. If it's kind of a random place like Fort Wilderness or something, might take you a
Yeah.
little while to get out there, right? But for the most part, the Disney bus system is pretty impressive. He's right. Air conditioning is wonderful.
Oh, yeah.
Typically can get a seat. Sometimes you have to stand, I guess. But um, I don't know. I completely agree with him that that's probably the best way to get around Disney. Of course, the monorail's limited to where it goes. The Skyliner's limited to where it goes. They're fun. I love the monorail. I always love the monorail. If I could ever, I always jump that, I will over grabbing some bus in that direction. But um, I couldn't agree with him more. I think he's right, spot on.
Yeah, it's funny. I love the Skyliner. That's probably my favorite. Monorail is classic for sure. But if you want to get somewhere, those buses are going to get you there. I mean, it is funny. Maddie was like, they fly in those bus lanes. I mean, they're cruising. You get there pretty quick. And we have had to wait in the past, like a while. Not the most recent trip we went on, but when we've stayed on property before and had to take the bus, sometimes I remember it taking a rotation or two. But we've been really lucky these last few trips. I don't know if they've just upped the number of buses or what, that we do not have to wait super long, and they've been pretty convenient. And yeah, the air conditioning, I mean, especially after being in France with no air conditioning at certain, not at Disneyland, but I definitely do not take air conditioning for granted. And there's nothing like a nice, cool bus after a hot park day. That is for sure. So, yeah, I think the buses are probably the most efficient. I don't know if I'd say they're the best, Stephen, but I'd say they're the most efficient um, transportation method on property. So yeah, thank you for sharing. Obviously, make sure to go give Idiot's Guide a listen. We plug them all the time. They're like my favorite Disney podcast ever, but they have been such great friends, and we appreciate them. So make sure you go and give them a listen to their awesome show. Well, that is all for this week. Thank you so much for listening to these Big Thunder Treasured Attractions episodes. Please share with us what your favorite part was. Did you learn something new? Is Big Thunder your favorite out of the mountains? Kind of where does it sit for you? Any of that good stuff via comments, DM, email us, soarinaroundwdwpod@gmail.com. We hope that you enjoyed the nerdiness of these treasured attraction episodes. And we do have a fun one up next, another favorite attraction for both of us. But we do have another couple of things coming up in between now and then. I've got some trips planned and every ride run. And so I want to make sure that you guys hear all of that too. But next week on the podcast will actually be our recap of everything D23 and kind of Dad's thoughts and my thoughts of all of the announcements that they made this past weekend. So stay tuned for that one next. When this one comes out, D23 will already have happened, but it happens, we don't have time to turn around an episode that quick. So we will be putting that out next week. So that is all for now. We hope that you guys have a good week, and we'll see you next time.
See you next week.
Hey, thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to give us a follow on Instagram at SoarinAroundWDWPod, where we share fun reels, throwback photos, and dive into weekly polls and debates. If you're listening on Spotify, be sure to follow and hit that 5-star button. If you are over on YouTube, subscribe and leave us a comment as well. If you're listening on Apple, a 5-star rating and a written review would mean the world. You can also now support the show through our Patreon at patreon.com/SoarinAroundWDW podcast by becoming a free or paid member and finding exclusive content and bonus episodes and videos there too. Thanks again for joining us. Catch you on the next flight.